If you're listening to recording of this on Daystar Television, we want to welcome you and all of our new viewers there. I've got a great show tonight. A couple of really interesting gentlemen, Pim Nascari and John Paul Berg. Payman's in BC and John Paul is in Nova Scotia. And they are part of a three-man team that presents one of the best podcasts that's going in Canada right now in the area of politics and culture. And I had the pleasure of being on their show recently, really enjoyed myself. And so I really had to have them back. Unfortunately, the third part of their team, the third wheel, as it were, Chris Erickson couldn't make it tonight, and we regret that. But I think we're going to get a lot of great commentary out of these gentlemen. So thank you for being here. It's great to have you.
Thanks for having us.
So I thought we could dive right in, guys. The sort of the overarching theme, we can call it that, is the new world order, and it seems like Canada is a flashpoint for this. And one of the key components of this seems to be the idea that Canadians shouldn't own anything. We should have no right of private property. Of course, those of us who understand history know that private property is was one of the pillars. It's one of the foundational things that exist in any free and prosperous society. And right now, what we're seeing on a lot of different fronts, from government especially, is the idea that we don't have the right to own anything. And we're seeing this with gun confiscation. The federal government is actually criminalizing people who don't want to surrender their guns and get paid nothing for them. In fact, they don't want to surrender their guns at all. This is a sort of a hallmark of totalitarian societies. Gun confiscation is. It's also a gateway, because people forget that guns are a subspecies of private property, and if they can take your guns, they can really take everything else. And speaking of everything else, there's land. We want to talk about this Cowichan decision that happened in BC, which is really completely eroded, or in some ways destroyed, the confidence that people have in land ownership, fee simple land ownership. So we want to talk about that too. And I thought maybe we could start there, Payman, since you're in BC. There's really been a real maelstrom of controversy over the Cowichan decision, but not a lot of people understand it and why it's so controversial. So maybe you could, if you could start us off there, I'd be interested to get your thoughts about it.
Yeah, and I don't claim to be an expert, especially in the presence of a lawyer like yourself, but the Cowichan land ruling, basically it almost invalidates this concept of fee simple. Fee simple is legalese jargon for what's supposed to be the highest form of property rights ownership of physical land, physical property.
Yeah.
And just for the audience, if they don't know what happened, is the courts basically came in and they did the exact opposite of what they're supposed to do. They're supposed to, under common law, protect private property. That's their job. And they said, nah, we're going to take this private property and we're going to give two owners to this, to the private property. One is the fee simple that the legitimate government of Canada gave to somebody who gave it to somebody who sold it to you. The other one is the First Nations. So you got dual ownership claim. I look at that and I think of it as the last nail in the coffin of something that's been going on for a long time in Canada. My parents, I'm originally from Iran. My parents, they grew up in the 50s in Iran, and they tell me stories about what their childhood was like. They lived on a farm. There was no property tax. There was no income tax. There wasn't even a currency. They used a tally stick ledger thing. Where I'm going with this is, if you don't pay taxes, there's no government. Right. Somebody is ultimately going to make every decision in your life. If there's a drought, your father will tell you, don't start a fire for this season. If you have a gun at your father and you fire it in a direction and you shoot your sister's, I don't know, pinky toe off, your father is going to come in and enforce justice.
Yeah.
As you pay more taxes, as the government gets bigger, that power drifts from you, the individual in the family unit, to the government. There is no way where you can pay taxes and not lose your rights. That's my point when I say the Cowichan land ruling is the last nail in the coffin.
Yeah, and it's being done in the name of recognizing Indigenous rights, which in and of itself is something of a fallacy, and that sounds maybe strange coming from somebody who is a status Indian. But this idea that somehow other people have a better right, a pre-existing right to lawful landowners in BC, really goes against everything that our country has stood for. But it's that this is the idea of taking away. I mean, what is a country other than a people that's connected to land? And if you disconnect people from land, that's going a long way to destroying a country, isn't it? What do you think, JP?
It's like we're becoming a commodity. It's like I frequently say, we're less citizens now with inherent God-given rights and more just we have state-sponsored privileges
Yeah,
in some kind of feudalist society.
yeah,
But I've seen this coming. It's like for the last 10 years, we've been doing these land acknowledgements.
yeah,
And I mean, it's from my estimation, like it's either Canada or it's the unceded territory or whatever First Nations tribe was here. And I'm fine with both. I don't make the
yeah.
rules, but I want my tax money back. I got about 25
I
years
want a
of
refund.
high taxes. I want that back if it's not Canada and I have no rights legally. And I mean, I think that's a reasonable assessment there. They're kind of incongruous positions. But
Yeah,
one of the big things that we have going on in Canada is the judiciary is stacked chock full of radical activist judges.
yeah,
They're interpreting the law through their own very skewed leftist interpretation of it. And it's really bad. Like, we don't just have gun confiscation and the property rights under attack. We actually have censorship coming forth. It's like,
oh yeah,
at this point, we're lying to ourselves if we don't say this is communism. This
yeah,
is some unrecognizable form of communism.
yeah. Well, this is a great point, and I just wrote a piece about this actually for my show. But the Supreme Court of Canada has been very much engaged in the reordering of society. And I mean, you talk about, Mark Carney goes over to Davos and he gives this bloviating speech about values. But when you really look at what the liberal values are, 3 months ago, the Supreme Court of Canada struck down mandatory minimums for people who possess the most heinous pornography, child pornography imaginable, and said that could result in cruel and unusual punishment of criminals. They struck down in earlier decisions, they struck down mandatory minimums for drug traffickers who have been convicted multiple times within a 10-year time frame. They struck down mandatory minimums for offenses involving firearms that almost exclusively are committed by gangs. And you're right, JP, they're passing laws. These courts are soon going to be enforcing, these hate speech laws and other things. And it seems to me that this is all connected. This all seems to be part of the New World Order that we're hearing about. What do you think, Payman? Am I off my rocker, or are these things connected? What are your thoughts?
They are, but like the way I view it, there's two problems. One is that government is too big. Two is that our government is extreme. So, so I mean, hypothetically, you could have a too big government that's very rigid and I don't know, run like the Swiss, or the Germans without emotion. But in our case, it's very extreme Marxist. And I'm sorry I have to say this, but a lot of our society has become completely feminized. Like it's not about intent; it's about outcome. Like if you hurt someone's feeling, even if you didn't mean it, you go to jail. And I contrast this with the hyper extreme masculine, which would be Iran, where it's like if a woman shows her hair, you got to stone her or something. But like I go back to my previous argument. Like if you give too much of your taxes to the government, something bad's going to happen. In Canada, it's gone off the rails. But like this judiciary that JP is talking about, he's absolutely right. Stacked full of activists. But when you're just ceding your rights, your responsibility, your agency in the form of taxes, something's got to give. And in this case, it's the insane legislating from the bench judiciary.
Yeah, and JP's got a point here about the judiciary, especially. It seems like, for example, the government in Ottawa or the government of BC for that matter, or other parts of the country, has no problem when the courts make some decision that expresses their will. They seem to see the courts as sort of an arm of the leftist executive state. But when the courts make a decision that goes against government, for example, in the recent Emergencies Act appeal, where it was found that actually charter rights were violated by the federal government, there's a dull thud. In fact, Andrew Lawton, I saw on my X page, was in Parliament, and he was talking. He was saying the Liberals refuse to say whether they will accept the Federal Court of Appeal ruling that found their use of the Emergencies Act was illegal and unconstitutional. Well, I couldn't help noticing, Mark Carney's in the news saying, well, people want to invest in Canada because we cherish the rule of law. I can't seem to just can't seem to connect these two. And then speaking of courts again, there was a trio of judges in Alberta. I don't know if you guys saw this, who came out and they got all up in arms saying, that Danielle Smith, is fettering their discretion, their judicial discretion, which, by the way, is judge speak. Discretion is their lawmaking power. And so I responded and I said, I'm just going to read this to you and see if I can get your take, JP. I said, unbelievably, some members, sorry, that's the wrong thing here. I said, where were these judges when the rights and freedoms of Albertans were violated by the Jason Kenney government during the COVID-19 pandemic? And what credibility do they now have among Albertans when they speak about upholding the rule of law to preserve their own power after failing to use that very power to protect the very Albertans whom they were appointed to serve? So in other words, the judiciary, they get all uptight when government wants to encroach on their power, and they'll say it publicly, which, by the way, in former times would have been taboo, but they don't care anything about enforcing when the government overreach comes, when they're asked to enforce government overreach. They don't have any problem with that. Seems to me this is a pretty big problem. What do you think, JP?
I think accountability in Canada is non-existent for these bad political actors. And it has a disenfranchising effect on the electorate. Like, it's demoralizing because we've seen a plethora of scandals throughout the Trudeau administration. They'll investigate themselves, like even the foreign interference. They had the Hogs report, and then they come out and it's like, don't worry, guys, we investigated ourselves, and you'll be relieved to know, that we're good. It's all good. And it's kind of become a joke at this point. But not only does it have a demoralizing effect on the electorate, and the inverse of that, it emboldens the bad political actors. And they just continue to push it as far as they can. And we're just in this positive feedback loop of where it's so corrupt now, it's almost hard to fathom. When you're looking at what's occurring in the country, it's crazy, man.
It's hard to reverse, isn't it? And I want to kind of turn the conversation now towards where you were going, it seems, JP, and talking about, Mark Carney, or as I call him, Mark's Carney, and all the stuff that was going on in the World Economic Forum and the New World Order. And I was reading up on my Cicero. I'll read this to you guys. See if this sort of resonates with you. He says, he was talking about Caesar, and he said, do not blame Caesar, blame the people of Rome who have so enthusiastically acclaimed and adored him and rejoiced in their loss of freedom and danced in his path and gave him triumphal processions. Blame the people who hail him when he speaks in the form of the new wonderful good society, read New World Order, which shall now be Rome, Canada, interpreted to mean more money, more ease, more security, more living fatly at the expense of the industrious. That's pretty on the nose, it seems to me, what's going on in Canada. But it seems like Canadians might be onto this. There was a new poll that came out, Payman, that says that 65% of Canadians, it's about 2/3, think the country is heading in the wrong direction. No duh. Including a majority of every province, every age group, all income levels, and both genders. That's right, both too, folks. The only group that thinks the country is heading in the right direction are the Carney Liberal voters, or the elbows up people. What do you think about this, Payman? Do you think that people have had enough of Mark Carney, and that they're going to reject this New World Order? or do you think that the liberals are just going to keep steaming along?
I think it's the latter. I think if they called an election, the liberals would win. I think all four of us here, it's human nature. We'll complain about things, but when it comes time to vote, uh, we don't want to take the hard road. It's one
Yeah.
thing to complain. The conservatives aren't doing enough, but then so election time, you say, "Oh, don't split the vote." I believe
Yeah.
it's going to be the same thing. Yes, people recognize that the country's going in the wrong direction because they don't have any agency. Between 40 and 60% of their income goes towards taxes because there's no hope, because everything is centralized in oligopolies. You got the banks, you got the tech companies. So you sense this, but because there's no easy solution out of this, you turn to the government for help. So if Mark Carney says, we'll give some tax relief for groceries, I don't think I after the April election, I don't really have the high hopes for the Canadian electorate I once had.
Yeah. Well, I think you're right. And Polling Canada actually put out a poll today that said, who would you prefer to lead Canada, Carney or Trump? And it's like almost 75% Trump. I don't know who they're polling, but Trump, it said to Carney at the World Economic Forum, JP, he said, Canada lives because of the United States. Remember that, Mark. And Mark Carney's talking about his new revolution or new world order, but Eric Metaxas, American author, he says this. He says this is the second American revolution, and President Trump is declaring independence from the new world order that Mark Carney's talking about. And so, what do you think about this, JP? Like, do you agree with Payman that there's really no hope for Canada in terms of voting our way out of this? What are your thoughts about that?
I really do think that this is the second American Revolution. I think it's the British Empire as it continued through the City of London, the financial
Oh,
systems,
I'm
and
so
I
glad
think
you brought this up.
well,
This is okay.
I
No,
think that's
yeah, no, please continue. I want to hear this.
well,
Yeah.
I just my interpretation is that's what Trump's doing. He's disassociating. When you look at the national defense strategy that was released quietly Friday, right before they did their sensational speeches, Mark Carney and Trump, it was redefining the relationship with Canada and the hemispheric doctrine, the Monroe Doctrine, which he is now calling the Don Roe Doctrine. I just in my most sober moment, I can't imagine that they're going to let Canada persist in this direction with the
Yeah.
Chinese Communist Party, with all of the corruption. I just don't think it's within the national interests of America to do so. Now, I'm not going to speculate how it's going to look, but I think economic force, like he said, is going to come. But that's what I interpret it as. It's
Yeah.
America divorcing itself from the EU, whatever it is. And they've echoed this. JD Vance went over there a few months ago and he said, like, your countries are unrecognizable. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like you're
That was
really
that Munich conference, right? Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
sir. And I mean, this is what Trump was kind of echoing, and they're really calling the climate grift out too. They're really saying, like, Trump actually said and now this is this isn't verbatim. This is kind of my version of it, but he essentially said that the Chinese people are making all kinds of money, the Chinese Communist Party building these windmills.
Yeah.
And they're selling them to all of you idiots. The Chinese Communist Party gets their energy from burning coal. I mean, and this
Yeah.
is the world they're living in. I don't think they realized how much the world has changed now with what Trump is doing. And they're still trying to implement the same old agenda, and we're not buying it anymore.
Yeah. Okay, folks, get ready because we're going to go down our first rabbit hole here because it's something. God bless you, JP, for bringing this up. So, Payman, you don't have to go with us, but I'm going to try and drag you along. My broker, I won't say his name, but he represents some really, he's connected to some really high net worth people, like that are sort of what we would imagine the Illuminati to be. And one of these guys told him about the COVID-19 pandemic like 2 years before it happened, said it was going to happen. Well, I was talking with him and he said that what's happening right now, most people think of what's happening in the world right now is we're sort of in a tripolar world. The world I grew up in was, the Cold War, the Soviets and Americans, and well, I guess Soviets and us, the West. And what it looks like, this tripolar world, we have Russia, China, and America. But he said, this Illuminati guy said, no, 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 you don't understand. The city of London is like a city state, just like Rome or Venice or the Vatican. And they're still controlled. The British Empire is still going on, just as JP says. And just to trot this out, he said that the importance of Venezuela to them was that the city of London includes some very, very extremely high net worth people who control a lot of things. And they were using Venezuela as a way to launder money that they were then using to cause disruption and discord in the United States in terms of BLM, you know, what's happening in Minnesota, all of it. And what he said is that what's really going on right now, what has been going on, is the British Empire is still at war with America. 250 years on, we're living that out. And that Trump is disrupting all of that. Okay, so now before you say that's totally crazy, I'm just going to add one more thing, and then I'm going to throw this like a big pile of something into Payman's lap. If this is right, and if you are the City of London Illuminati guys, who would you want to be controlling British North America? A British patriot with Irish and British passports, schooled at Oxford, who had run the Bank of England, who wants to bring us closer to England, make us over in the image of England, and wants us to take us away from a closer partnership with the United States. In fact, be antagonistic to the United States. Call me crazy, Payman. What do you think? JP brought it up. I'm just diving down the rabbit hole with him. Tell me I'm crazy. What do you think?
You're not crazy. I want to gobble up the next 40 minutes.
Is this the first time you've heard this?
No, I've been living in this world for the past like 6 years.
Okay. Because I just found out about this stuff. I'm late to the party. So.
Oh, dude, yeah. You and I went to grab a beer, and the three of us will go over this. Someone characterized it that England had 2 civil wars. So I can't remember the War of Roses and the actual English Civil War. Yeah. And then you characterize the American Revolution as the 3rd English Civil War, because if you think about it, you have the Patriots and the what were the traitors called? The Loyalists. Yeah. And then the 4th English Civil War would be the U.S. Civil War. Again.
Right. And of course, Britain took the side of the South in that war, as we know. Yeah.
And then they're calling this the 5th English Civil War, just to be fancy.
Well, you forgot about 1812.
No, that was I know what you're saying. But that was the Civil War.
Okay. Okay. Sure.
Yeah, you can make that argument. You're right.
Because Canada wasn't a country then, right?
No, but in a way, you're right. But the gentleman who was making this argument, Brad Nickerson, he excluded 1812. Okay. And he said that right now we're in the 5th English Civil War because we call it the City of London, but they're all swampy. Like whether the globalists come out of this winning or what they're calling the sovereigntists, the 4 of us here, we're not going to get our $1 million royalty check. We're still going to be plebs. It's just a little bit better if the Trump team wins.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. So Nickerson, did he write a book about this?
I don't believe so. He's a former government employee. He's got some Substack articles, but he's the guy that's on the spectrum.
This is fascinating. Wow. Because that would kind of change the whole game of risk quite a bit, the risk board quite a bit, wouldn't it, JP?
Yes, I've read extensively on this topic. It's kind of been an obsession of mine since I learned about it.
Could become an obsession of mine.
It is, man. Well, you have an interpretation of history, and then some new evidence comes to light, and it's like, oh my God, it's entirely different. But there's some books to reference. Tragedy and Hope by Carroll Quigley. It was written in the 1960s, and it's regarding the Anglo-American Empire, or the Anglo-American establishment, as he calls it. Mm-hmm. And it was the recapturing of America through the financial system of the British Empire. He goes right back to Rhodesia and Rhodes, and then Milner, the Fabian Society, a lot of this stuff. And they set up these NGOs. Back in the day, it was the Rockefeller Foundation. In the modern time nowadays, it's George Soros and the Gates Foundation. Right. But it's the same thing, and it's influencing our politics, and it always has. Another book, because that's like a 1,200-page book, Tragedy and Hope. And they were so powerful, and it was such an expose on the deep state, so to speak, and its early origins, that they were able to keep it out of print. So then about 10 years ago, it started to come back into the conversation. And a gentleman named Joseph Plummer wrote a synopsis of it, or a summation. And this is called Tragedy and Hope 101. I would recommend everyone read Tragedy and Hope 101 because it takes all of the important things from Tragedy and Hope. And then another one would be Canadian Matthew Ehret. Payman has had him on the show a few times. He's a historian, and he wrote A Tale of Two Americas, an Unfinished Symphony. And it's outlining the battle between these two elements of the British Empire versus the Americans. And it's very fascinating. That's what I think is coming out. And you could listen to commentators such as the Promethean Action Group. They talk a lot about this subject. Tom Luongo, who was on with Payman Askari. And
I've met Tom. Yeah. Very interesting guy.
He's someone else who delves into this. Alex Craner.
Yeah. Those guys are great together.
Yes.
Point, counterpoint. Yeah.
But that's what I think we're seeing, honestly, man. And there's a lot of people blackpilling on Trump. There's a lot of people losing faith in it. And I think we're seeing elements of a color revolution. I think in Minnesota specifically. Let me get this lady's name.
You've already expanded my reading list.
Dr. Maria Stephan. She went on the Colbert Report. Now, if you look this lady up, her whole thing was doing color revolutions for the CIA through the National Endowment for Democracy, which is what they use for the regime change operations. She's a PSYOP specialist, and she went on Colbert and was talking about, like, they're directly fomenting this in America. So they're not just trying to vilify or demonize Trump anymore. They're actually trying to foment and inspire people to go into the streets and challenge the federal
next civil war. Yeah.
That's what we're seeing, man. I really believe that.
So tell me how this would apply to the unrest that we're seeing in Britain, because that's an important piece of this too. Why would the City of London people want to see this unrest in Britain? What do you think, Payman? Do you want to field that one?
Yeah, that's a tough question, but I'll try to take a swing at it. Europe is bankrupt. I don't think they recognize this. They don't want to lose their spot in the world. And they kind of feel the walls closing in because everything's moving to the global south or America.
Right. Yeah.
And I think they recognize that unrest is coming. And it's not all their own fault. It is their fault that they were stupid enough to listen to America and deindustrialize by shutting off Russian oil and gas. So now other people are suffering. So I think they're turning inwards with the censorship laws. The other element of that, when you're asking about, you're hinting at why are they having mass immigration? Why are they bringing all these Muslims in that, culturally they don't mix? I think they recognize historically, if you have one homogenous population, it's very difficult to enslave them. I think that's what they recognize, and you see it in Canada now too. It's so balkanized; it's almost impossible to unite the Canadians anymore.
Yeah, the numbers in Canada on immigration are really frightening. I actually looked these up. You guys probably saw this. The Carney Liberals brought in 392,000 new permanent residents in 2025. That was only 3,000 shy of the target set by Trudeau, even though Carney promised lower immigration. Of course, that's just, that's the numbers that they're reporting. So we don't know what the actual numbers are, but you start to see the effects of this in grocery prices. I was looking at food inflation. You guys might have seen this chart. In G7 countries, Canada has had the highest increase in food inflation in the G7, double what the US had, 6.2%. USA is at 3.1. UK is at 4.5. And this, of course, the cost of living, this is part of what drives civil unrest too, isn't it?
Yeah, they're also attacking a lot of farmers through the West. You're seeing a lot of farmers protests. It's like that should be ringing bells. If you've studied totalitarianism through the 20th century, they always go after the farmers.
Yeah.
Why? Because they want to control the food.
Yeah.
The whole Klaus Schwab thing, you will own nothing and you'll be happy. It should be refined. It's you will own nothing and you will be absent recourse. That's what they mean by that, and that's what they want. This is why it's always coinciding with confiscation of firearms.
Yeah.
These are all just modus operandi of authoritarian regimes, and that's what we're seeing, and people are failing to realize how real this truly is right now.
But some people, there's a resistance movement. One of them is in Alberta, the Alberta Prosperity Project, and this has been very much gathering steam and grabbing the attention of the country, even grabbing the attention of the United States. The Trump administration is talking about it publicly. There was a story in the Western Standard today that Premier Smith says she won't demonize the 1 million Albertans now who have signed on to a petition for independence. She says she's still going to try and convince them to stay in Canada because she thinks that's what's best for all of us. But I was noticing, Payman, that in British Columbia, that there's a Western independence movement and a BC Prosperity Project. Have you heard about this?
Yeah, I mean, I only heard it indirectly because whatever David Eby threw a tantrum today. I see this again. You kind of opened this. You can't put this genie back in the bottle when you brought up the conspiracy of the city of London. A couple of months
Is it
back,
a conspiracy theory or is it just a theory?
It's a fact, but like we're going down. It's
a rabbit hole. Okay, fair enough.
Canada dumped a whole bunch of U.S. treasuries in an attempt to tank the U.S. dollar. That was a declaration of war. And then Carney goes to the WEF, I'm guessing at the behest of the king and all the globalists.
Yeah.
And he basically confronts Trump there. That's another escalation of the war.
Yeah.
And I don't think Trump is, he's already gotten Venezuela. He's getting Greenland. He's encircling Canada. Yeah. And I was thinking, like, why would Carney do this? This is suicide. Two things have happened, and you reach your own conclusions. China almost had a coup. And Minneapolis,
which we didn't hear anything about, right?
Yeah, they buried it. But in Minneapolis, you also almost had a coup. At the very least, it was an attempted color revolution.
Yeah.
And I think Donald Trump, he's probably sitting in a room with Tulsi Gabbard and Ratcliffe right now. He's like, all right, gloves are coming off. We're getting directly involved in Alberta and hopefully also BC.
Yeah. Well, and you brought up Minnesota. I saw something really strange. Well, maybe not strange to some people. I thought it was really strange. Former Minnesota Governor Jesse Ventura is now telling Minnesotans to secede and become part of Canada. He says Trump dislikes Minnesota so much that it's time to leave and become part of Canada. I thought to myself, how could Canada get any worse but to import, what's going on in Minnesota? We've got enough liberals in the country, and now we're going to import all the violent ones, to say nothing of Somali pirates. But were you surprised? Does that shock you to hear that, JP? That now people in Minnesota are talking about they want to be United Empire loyalists.
I mean, I get deep into the conspiracy zone. That's kind of my thing. I'm known to go down a rabbit hole or two, but Jesse Ventura I think he's like punch drunk. I think he's taken too many falls. I was listening to him, and he doesn't look well neither. I mean, he was always a bit flamboyant, but the man does not look well. And he sounds
Jesse the body Ventura. He's more like Jesse the walking corpse.
He's not the mind Ventura, that's for sure. But I mean, ultimately, he looks like he's very mentally ill. He's got some Trump derangement symptoms, and he's projecting it all, and people are giving him a platform to do it. When I see him speaking, I think, get this poor man off of the internet. You know what I mean? It almost seems exploitative now. He seems like he's
almost like Joe Biden-esque.
Exactly.
Yeah. But there was this other weird thing. Since we're going way down the rabbit hole, guys, that I saw a letter that was purported to be from Antifa. Did you guys see this? It was dated January 27th, 2026. It says, "Dear comrades, it is with great pleasure to inform you that the first stage of Operation Swamp Donkey is a complete success. We have successfully infiltrated behind the Alberta separatist lines and are now proceeding to the second stage of the Operation Sabotage. We are winning. Let us celebrate with a traditional Antifa toast, a shot glass of freshly squeezed capitalist blood, and aged cheddar on sourdough bread. Viva the revolution." So, I mean, but all joking aside, as it looks like the Alberta referendum on independence, not separation, folks, independence, um, is looking more and more like it's going to happen. I think it is going to happen. We're going to see more. I predict that we're going to see civil unrest in Alberta like we've never seen before, for the same reason that we're seeing it in places like Minnesota and elsewhere. What do you think about that, Payman?
I don't think we're people in Canada. We're subjects, and
Yeah.
we're kind of pawns of two actors. You could call it the Crown and whatever the U.S., but
Yeah.
let's focus on CSIS versus CIA.
Right.
CSIS already preempted this by coming out and saying, we suspect there's going to be some interference in the Alberta referendum, which
Yeah.
I interpreted to mean CSIS is going to get involved to prevent CIA from getting involved.
Yeah.
And these two are going to duke it out. As to whether there's going to be like unrest on the streets, that depends on which of those two agencies has more influence, or maybe
Yeah.
they're going to have a civil war by proxy. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. What do you think, JP? I just to put a little color on the palette, I know a guy who was a former British intelligence agent, and he said that he's talked to people in the CIA, and that he said that if Donald Trump had been president during the Freedom Convoy, that the Americans would have sent peacekeepers into Ottawa and that they would not have left. And he says that there are contingent plans the Americans have to enter Canada under auspices of peacekeeping, and that would be an excuse to come into Canada and stay. Does that sound nutty, JP? I know you said
I don't think anything in this climate right now, it's so dynamic and transformative that anything could happen.
Yeah.
It's never been like this. There's never been a time like this. Like we're
Yeah.
watching the post World War II order that's failed.
Yeah.
And we're watching the great powers reassemble themselves and assert themselves. And as Canadians right now, like the most pertinent thing we have to ask ourselves, it's like we forget that, like we really think, well, we're told from the corporate press swill merchants that we could replace America as an ally and a trading partner. And it's like we trade with America because of one very important concept. It's proximity. They're right there. There's no way to replace them. We don't have the infrastructure to get goods to Europe and to the Asian markets. That would cost a fortune. It's just it's really ill-advised to be antagonistic to this administration. So that's why it tells me it's like we don't have a government presently, a federal government that is acting on the best interest of Canadians.
Right.
He might be acting on the best interests of Davos or Brussels or even Beijing, but it's certainly he's not acting for the betterment of his people, and that's a massive problem.
Yeah, it is huge. And the way that Canadians have solved this in the past is when we didn't like our government is we would elect a different government. That's not working. I mean, we have really good reason to think that we haven't had a free and fair election for a long time. I personally don't believe that Justin Trudeau actually won a majority government in 2015. To me, that's inconceivable. And his performance in elections since then convinces me that that's true. But we've got Pierre Poilievre, who's it looks like his leadership is under review. If we are gonna, let's say, vote ourselves out of this mess, if there were a snap election called later this year, Payman, you've said already that you think the Liberals would win. Why is the CPC sort of the Washington Generals to the Harlem Globetrotters, if you get my analogy? Why are they so good at losing? Why don't they find a new strategy to try and win an election? Is it just they can't figure it out, or heaven forbid, are they losing on purpose? Like, are they tanking?
Like you hear cliches like, there's no political solution out of this. You can't vote your way out of this, or politics is downstream of culture. You don't really know what those mean until you actually run for office. And I'm not trying to brag, but I ran.
You did. Yeah, you did.
Yeah, I did, and I lost miserably, but I learned a lot. And one of the things, when you go into the debate stage, that is the most authentic polling of where the country is, because it's the people that come in and the questions that they ask reflect what they want to hear from the political candidates in order to vote for them, which is what government they want.
Right.
They would ask, why don't the ferries run on time? Why do we have so much climate change? Why are we such a racist people? Why is the garbage not being collected on time? So the Conservative Party has to operate in that environment. And now we get back to what I said, that politics is downstream of culture. I hate the Conservative Party. I think they're useless. I don't think they're conservative. But it's unfair to ask them to be conservative when the voters are anything but conservative. They're far, I think they're progressive, but it's overwhelmingly liberal.
That's a great insight. The question is, why is that so? How do we get there? What are your thoughts there? Like, because there seem to be a lot of us, at least in Alberta, and even Alberta, people think of it as a redneck province. We're pretty much split between, we had an NDP government, and we're pretty much, but even back in the old days, Ralph Klein days, it was pretty much split. What the reason why we kept getting conservative governments over and over again is because the Liberal vote was split between the NDP and the Liberal Party. Once the Liberal Party in Alberta became extinct, the NDP became a real serious threat to become a government, and they did it. So even in Alberta, arguably the most redneck province in Canada, there's still a lot of Liberals. Why is that? What do you think, JP? Why has this sort of the needle shifted so far to the left in our country that a party that has a conservative platform, like let's say the PPC, that Payman ran for, really can't get a sniff of power?
I think with the PPC, the most relevant issue is them being outside of the establishment. I don't think them being conservative had anything to do with the exclusion, and they were excluded from debates. We've seen a lot of people, like there was like almost a concerted effort to demonize the PPC. And from my estimation, I really think the PPC kind of scared the establishment in Canada, because they knew it's like, finally, there's a large contingent within the electorate that was losing faith in our institutions. This is right when the trucker convoy was happening. We're at peak COVID, peak lockdowns. And I think they were really frightened that the PPC were going to gain relevance within the electorate. And that's why I think, now I'm Mr. Conspiracy. I'm fine with that. But I think Pierre Poilievre was chosen and preemptively propped up with this very weak, feckless, populist shtick. Yeah. I think he was reciting or sloppily regurgitating scripted rhetoric in order to kind of capture those. All of a sudden, Pierre's talking about the WEF when he was a member. You know what I mean? All of a sudden, I'm going to ban all my ministers. He was reciting dialogue, and I think it was very efficacious. And I think this was utilized in conjunction with a lot of these big accounts on X that are CPC shills, I call them. They essentially work for the Conservative Party. Yeah. And I think they were attacking the PPC, demonizing, saying that Max worked for the Liberals. And at the same time, they're propping up Pierre with this weak, fake populism. And I really think it was efficacious with the Canadian electorate. I couldn't answer why we're so gullible. I would have to attribute it to the state-sponsored media. Yeah. Why we're so liberal and so gullible. Yeah. But that's my insight on it.
Brian Peckford, who is the last living signatory to the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, he wrote this. He said, "Big government is as much part of Conservative Party policy as Liberal Party policy." He says this present Conservative group is to support the Liberals' further attack on the taxpayer with actual grocery subsidies, whether we can afford it or not. It is a terrible, unwise, long-term economic policy. And he says federal government employees and Ontario government employees make more than their private sector counterparts. I think, the point he's making is, we talk about this conspiracy theory, if you like, of the uniparty, but I think there is some truth to saying that, and I think this became clear, especially during the last election, when Carney attacked Trump and Poilievre joined in that. It sort of ganged up on that. It became more clear than ever that there isn't really a lot of difference between the policy of the CPC versus the Liberal Party of Canada. Would you agree with that, Payman?
I would. Let's start in the US. So you have Obamacare that expands the scope of medical assistance federally in the US.
Right.
Recently in Minnesota, we had all this fraud with the Somalis where
Yeah.
they're siphoning off money from the government. What is that? That is an unproductive sector of it's just non-productive. It's fraud. If you move to downtown Vancouver, you have the legal profession. I'm sorry now, Leighton, I'm attacking you.
That's okay.
You have the legal profession.
Jesus
certain
didn't like
ways.
lawyers either, you know. Oh ye scribes and Pharisees.
Lawyers and bankers. But like the legal profession, the accounting profession, the regulatory profession, this is all artificial. Like it doesn't really add value in the sense that if the government didn't require me to file my taxes, I probably wouldn't hire an accountant.
Yeah,
So
fair
when
enough.
we talk about like the bureaucracy is getting too big and the bureaucracy is a voting block, you can add to that lawyers, accountants, regulators like site inspectors, as well as people who are committing fraud, stealing the taxpayer money, which is what happened in Minnesota. They were using those people as voters.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
so when we say the uniparty, like these parties, it's almost like they don't have power anymore. They've been hijacked by this gravity well, which is this artificial space of people that are receiving higher salary than they're worth.
Yeah. Fascinating. So let's talk about a lot of the problems. And it seems like there aren't any solutions. JP, I'm interested to know from you what you think, you know, if you ran the world, or let's say if you were designing a way out of this mess for Canada, if there was a way out, where would you start? What would be the first thing? What's the most important thing that you think Canada needs if we're going to go forward as a country and get out of this seeming tailspin that we're in as a nation? What do you think about that?
Right now, and I think this is very obvious, we need to humble ourselves and restore diplomatic relations with America.
Yeah.
I think that's if the Canadian people are going to suffer if that doesn't occur. So the only question in my mind is how long are they going to let us suffer? How bad are they going to let the economy get? We have no cards to play. When Trump uttered that, with the 51st state thing first arose, that was very true. I wouldn't say we exist because of America, but I mean, America does have the capacity to very easily make us not exist. And I'm not speaking in a military standpoint, just by cutting us off. I think it would be, I think it's lunacy that they're being antagonistic with this administration. I just sincerely do. And I think it's all tied together. I
Yeah.
think we're watching this happen right across the Western world. One of the biggest things to lend credence to my assertion regarding the Commonwealth countries is the fact that we're all on the exact same trajectory. We're seeing the same agendas being implemented, and no one's voting for it. No one asked for weaponized mass migration. No one asked for Orwellian level censorship laws. No one asked for any of this stuff. The climate, the technocracy,
Yeah.
being taxed on carbon. I don't think they're popular. I think it's being imposed from an external force. And I think it is right across not just the Commonwealth countries, but most of the EU countries, minus Poland and Hungary. Anyone that had a nationalist leader that actually cared about their country, we've seen them, they were able to mitigate the effect of this global order.
Yeah.
But that's what I think we're seeing play out. I think it's a massive civil conflict in the West, a banker's civil war, perhaps.
Brilliant. Well, and our banker says that Canadians are not being governed. He says we are being managed. And I think he's right. I think there's a lot to what you say, JP. What about you, Payman? I mean, you ran for office. When you ran for office, what did you tell people you were going to do to make life better for your constituents if you were elected?
Well, I mean, I the things I said, and maybe in hindsight I shouldn't have said it because they
Bread
didn't
and
care.
circuses.
No, but I was like, we have to reduce our debt. We have to
Yeah.
stop sending money overseas. We have to repair our relationship with the U.S. I don't know. We need a two-tier, not a, what do they call it, mixed healthcare system. All of these things just
Hybridized,
bounced off
Yeah.
them. Huh?
hybridized
Yeah.
system.
Yeah.
Yes, yes, yeah.
Yeah.
So those are the suggestions I had. I think what you're asking me is like, what the hell can we do right now,
Yeah.
given that
How do
our
we
backs
fix
are to the
this?
wall?
Is there a fix? And
I
if
mean,
so,
the easiest fix,
where do you start?
the CIA. The easiest fix is just go on vacation in Mexico and let Trump figure like do this.
Hands off the wheel. Wow. Okay. Well, that's not very empowering. I do agree with you in a sense. I think a big thing that Canada is lacking right now is inspiring leadership. We don't. Canada does not seem to have a man of the hour like a Donald Trump or a Javier Milei or even someone like Maloney in Italy, or a Viktor Orban, somebody who we can sort of uh, watch them twirl the baton, and we hear the band playing. We can march behind them towards something. Nobody who's in politics seems to have a grand vision for Canada. And let's face it, Canada has accomplished great things. We've done many great things. We have a lot to be proud of as Canadians. But it seems to me that one of the uniting things that in the past has been when we take on big projects and we try to do big things, and no one's talking about that right now. Even something like a pipeline. I think this is a big part of the reason why government is resistant to pipeline, because a pipeline like building a railroad or building bridges, for example, that has a way of uniting a country. That is as a way of inspiring people, that we have a clear vision that we can do big things. Conrad Black talks a lot about this in his books. That really what's holding Canada back is we're shackled by just awful, like the worst kind of leadership. And he thinks that if we could get the right kind of leadership, that could make a huge difference. What do you think, JP? Is that sort of too simplistic, or do you think that if someone were to come into the public eye, who could inspire people with a vision, a clear vision, an inspiring vision for the country, do you think that could make a big difference to the way Canadians feel about Canada right now?
I think a charismatic leader with integrity always has hope. Someone that could come in like Trump did with the Republican Party and actually take over one of the establishment parties.
Yeah,
As for Canada, like Canada, we could have it all. Everyone knows of our natural resources, but we're not developing them, and we have not been intentionally since the first Trudeau administration,
yeah,
since the first Trudeau government. So I mean, and then there's this premise, and you see it right across, like it's relative to Carney's book too. It's this neo-Malthusian, anti-human degrowth agenda.
yeah,
Like they
yeah,
don't want us to exploit our natural resources. They don't want us. What they want us to do is to get used to a lesser quality of life,
yeah,
and that's what a lot of these people are programmed with, and they don't believe that's good. It's like they vilified industry and they vilified growth to the
yeah,
point where people don't think they want it, and they will when they're starving and they're freezing to death. But until then, we have this luxury belief, and it's nonsense. And this is what we're seeing people like Melee and Trump speak against. It's like,
yeah.
look, we got to be prosperous. We have to
Mm,
let the people be prosperous, and that's what I see Trump doing. With the 10% interest rates that he's trying to do, with getting the conglomerates out from buying homes. He says homes are for Americans to live in.
yeah,
We can't. It's not a commodity to be traded by massive multinational corporations.
yeah,
I think
yeah,
small things like this are empowering the people again to give them a quality of life, and that's what's lacking. But this in Canada, it's all by design.
yeah, yeah,
And that's a massive problem. I think the right leader could still do it, though. I'm not that black pilled on it.
yeah,
I think he would have to be one serious figure, and I don't
yeah.
think he could pander to our electorate. Our
No,
electorate is wrong.
yeah.
So a good leader has to come out and take a hard stance and then convince everyone that
Well,
this
that's
is the
kind of what
right way
Trump
to
did,
go.
wasn't it? I
That's right.
mean,
That's
really.
exactly what he did.
Yeah. And Millet for that matter.
Mhm.
And so we shouldn't discount that someone like that could come along and make a big difference. What do you think, Payman? Are we too far gone? You're just going to move to Mexico and watch the CIA do all this? Or do you think that if we had someone come along who could inspire people with a clear vision for Canada, that could really move the needle? What do you think?
Yeah, I was thinking as JP was answering that, if you look at Milei, yes, he's great. He got to where he is because Argentina, it hit rock bottom. So
Yeah,
the people
they
woke
really
up.
did. This is true. Yeah.
Maloney, I don't know how she got in because she said all the right, although right now she's kind of her hands are tied. She can't do anything, but she did
Yeah.
say all the right things and they got her in. And a lot of there are some right wing movements in Europe, like the AFD. Orban is a little bit different, but he was behind the Iron Curtain and their country was very far left.
Yeah.
Canada, it's we haven't hit rock bottom yet. The housing market's still there. We have the legacy of the United Empire Loyalists. Could it happen? Yes. But after seeing the electorate and talking to my friends in the lower mainland Vancouver area, it's very difficult, no matter how inspirational you are as a leader, if you're leading people that disagree with you fundamentally. And I'll finish with this. Donald Trump didn't come in a vacuum. Americans have liberty in their bones, and they've been
Yeah.
fighting the UN for decades.
Yeah. You're right. He's the way I see Donald Trump is MAGA is the wave and Trump is on the surfboard. Or he's what
Yeah.
people are looking at, but MAGA is much bigger than Donald Trump, and I saw that up close and personal at a Trump rally. So I've seen this, and part of what's different about what's going on in the United States, and Brian Peckford talks about this, is we talk about the rule of law, but you really cannot effectively have a rule of law, an operating rule of law, unless you recognize the supremacy of God. And I think one of the huge problems, one of the huge withering things at the core of the Canadian state right now, the Canadian polity, is secularism. It's a new cult of a religion, and people are buying into it. It's seductive, but it's very, very destructive. And I think if this new empowering, inspirational vision, if we were going to have a sort of a renovation in Canada of our core values, like they're having in the United States, I think it's got to involve a turn back towards at least Judeo-Christian morality. But I think my view is that I think God has blessed Canada so greatly. We have so many wonderful people in this country, including the people who are on this call and those who are listening. I just don't believe that he could let all of that be destroyed. I still believe that God has a great plan for this country and its people. But I think the biggest thing that could change and move people is a return to faith, and it's happening. It's especially in Gen Z. Gen Z men in particular are rejecting secularism. They want something new. They want an inspiring vision. I wonder what the two of you think about that. JP?
Everything has been we've gotten so far from God, and the youth see it more than ever. There's no meaning, there's nothing substantive. Everything is just cheap and surface level, and they feel the effects of this. So now it's like there was a time back in the early 1960s when rebelling from your parents meant moving away from God. You know what I mean? It meant
Yeah.
listening to rock and roll, maybe
Yeah.
drinking alcohol. But now it's the opposite. If you want to be different and stand out as a young man, stand up straight, put a tie on, pull your pants up. You know what I mean? And start to look at our traditions again. And God is the biggest thing. We've desanctified humanity in secular modernity. And when you desanctify humanity, when you take man from God, that's the soil that sustains us.
Yeah.
And we slowly start to become something unrecognizable. And that's where we are now. We're rationalizing the abortion on a mass scale. This is like human sacrifice levels.
Yeah.
We're even normalizing MAID now for
Yeah.
people. Hey, you don't like life? Just check out. It doesn't matter. Why? Because there is no God. That's the thing, right? We've desanctified humanity. We've moved so far away from God that we're unrecognizable to each other. And that's the only way we win.
Yeah.
That's the only way we share truth again, is to come back to Christ. That's my true interpretation.
Amen. Amen. I so agree. What do you think, Payman?
I always go back to when I came to Canada in '89, and we were more conservative, like traditional, our family. And I
Right.
contrast that with what I witnessed amongst the Canadians. And, you know, like in my mind, like you cannot separate religion from like the institution of the family. So,
Right.
so,
Yeah.
you know, when I look at all the divorce rates, that's almost like people turning their back on religion. When I look at, you know, fatherlessness,
That's a
turning
great
back.
point. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the other one is when I look at kids disrespecting their parents, like swearing at their mom or
Right.
dad.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure
Yeah.
there's something in the Bible about, you know, honor the, you know, parents, but I haven't
Yeah.
read the whole thing yet.
I think it's the fourth commandment. Yeah. If I
There
remember
we
it
go.
right. Yeah. Yeah. And there's nothing in there, by the way, about parents honoring their children. Wow. What a great conversation. I knew it would be. I so respect these gentlemen. It's such a joy to listen to them and learn from them. And I hope that all of you feel the same way, having to listen to our two guests here. I want to turn it over to Michael. Before I do, I just want to share a verse of scripture that I think applies here. It's from Ephesians chapter 1, verse 10. It says, "In the dispensation of the fullness of times, he might gather together in one all things in Christ, both which are in heaven and which are on earth in him." So with that, Michael, I'm going to turn it over to you, and let me know if there's some comments. People have some questions for these gentlemen, and if not, then maybe you could lead us in a closing prayer. Oh, Michael, your mic.
There we go. I can
Yeah.
spell my name, but I can't turn it on and off yet. So I got to say, the comments are fast and furious today. So thank
Fantastic.
you to
I knew they
all
would
of
be.
you.
Yeah.
There would, if I would have put them up on the screen, you guys would have had no conversation whatsoever. So worthy of a celebration there. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for being so engaging on a Thursday evening. And
What's kind of the best one, Michael, of the bunch? If you could
Oof.
pick a comment of the night.
well, let's just say that people were talking amongst themselves.
Oh, great!
Consistently.
Wow,
I'm
that's
gonna
the best.
start. I'm gonna start with. I want to say, Carl Simon, 60. Let's see. I can read, and I'm pretty sure that's.
Yeah.
Maybe it's Carly
Thank you,
Simon.
Leighton Gray. Love these guys. Okay.
Yes.
On that we agree. I love them too. They're great.
Yes, and then of course, Sharon. Thank you for being from Ontario
Hello from
and-
Ontario. My wife's from Ontario.
and saying
Lots of
hello.
great people from Ontario.
Yes, and great fishing
Yeah.
and camping. Love
Yeah.
that Lake of the Woods, among many others. And
This is an interesting. Do you see Doug Ford asking Premier Smith to stop the Alberta mandate movement?
let me bring that back in.
Yeah, I
It's
don't
timed.
think. Yeah, afraid to lose the cash cow. They see it. I think his meeting with Carney was not about this. I'll tell you. I know Premier Smith a little bit. I've been able to spend some time with her, and one thing I'll say about her is she loves Alberta. I think she sincerely cares about people and what's best for Albertans. She in her heart of hearts, she is a federalist. She sees Alberta having a role, but a leading role within Canada. So her vision for Alberta is not independence.
Mhm.
She's made that abundantly clear. She's not going to interfere with the independence movement, and that's to her credit. But she's not going to get on board. What she's hoping is to achieve a better deal for Alberta within Canada. That's her goal. So I don't think she would need convincing from Mr. Ford in Ontario to pursue that goal because she's been very explicit about that. In fact, she just said that in a press conference today.
Right.
So I think that hopefully that answers the
Yes.
question.
And now, in regards to the monarchy, which sounds a lot like Monopoly, if you ask me.
Yeah.
And Bob Dylan said, "You got to serve somebody." And that whole thing of there's no
Yeah.
industry in Canada that's not run by.
Well, there might
by
be one.
monopolies.
There might be one. It's
Yes.
podcasting.
Yeah, that's right.
I
And
don't know.
So when what a wonderful conversation, you guys.
Yeah.
I will. Let's just put some more gasoline on the fire. Deuteronomy 23.
Yeah.
There you go. That's pretty much a direct thing from the Bible, and it's a tale as old as time.
Yeah. That's another rabbit hole we're not going to go down tonight. We went down a few. I'm glad we did.
Oh,
'cause
it's
we pulled
great.
some rabbits out of some hats too, I think. So
Well,
Yeah.
that City of London conversation and those books. Thank you, JP, for
Yeah.
mentioning a couple of phenomenal titles.
Yeah. And we
And
forgot to ask them, Michael, where people can find their podcast and their platforms. You
yes,
guys want to share that?
Certainly, we have a podcast every Tuesday and Thursday at 3 p.m. It's called The Philosopher, the Stoic, and the Teddy Bear. That's with
And it's
Mr.
great,
Chris
folks.
Erickson.
Really good.
Yeah, we have guests on Thursday. Today we had Randy Hillier and Jordan
yeah.
Keel.
Yeah.
So it was a great conversation. We do it pundit style, similar to like this. We all go through topics. I have a podcast called Dumb the Wiser. I do that every Tuesday at 1 p.m. Eastern. It's always live, and I'll let Payman tell you where to find him.
Sure. You can catch me on X at Payman Ascari 451. As JP said, the Philosopher Stoic Teddy Bear. We are on Substack, Rumble, YouTube. I also have a podcast in lay terms on Substack, Rumble, YouTube.
Yeah. And one thing I'll say about JP, although I don't endorse smoking, I love that he smokes on camera because it makes me feel like I'm watching Walter Cronkite or something.
It's
so
crazy how many
very
people
cool.
say that.
Yeah, very cool. Yeah. But JP, I really hope you quit smoking because
I do it for the aesthetic. It's the sake of the art.
And you do it well, my brother. Okay, Michael,
Oh,
back
that's
to
good.
you.
Yes. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for the support of Gray Matter, and of course, for supporting Payman and JP and Chris, who's not here tonight. For those of you that that are big fans of Gray Matter, I don't know if I was on a family emergency this evening. That's why we were late getting here, fellas, ladies and gentlemen. So thank you for your patience. Also, thank you for your support of Leighton and being on Daystar and being on the interwebs. Of course, in the coming days, please watch your social media streams for a Shopify link so that you see that, look at that hoodie. I know, and there's a t-shirt and a mug and all kinds of wonderful Gray Matter swag. And I will shamelessly plug that and gild the lily, as our friend Jeffrey Chaucer said. And thank you for your support. And here's a great way to show your Gray Matter pride. And if you don't want to use the word pride, support is great too. So thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for that. Thank you so much for being here. We would all love to chat some more, but that's always for another day. That's why tomorrow's another day, as my mother used to tell me. So I can close us in prayer. And Lord, thank you that we could have a wonderful, robust conversation. And thank you that we can use this technology to come together, to build community, to glorify you, and to be good to our fellow humans. And may we walk in love and light. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thanks, Michael. I want to thank our guests for being with us, and all of you who joined us, especially those of you who are listening to a recording of this on Daystar TV. Thanks. Welcome to Gray Matter, and we welcome you to as our sort of our new audience. But really grateful for this conversation. Hope you enjoyed it. You found it inspiring and edifying, and we look forward to being with you next time on the Gray Matter.